Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take complex history, dense documents, or critical source material, and we cut right through the noise to give you the essential truth.
Our mission today is, it's foundational, it's ambitious, and it's absolutely critical. We're about to embark on an in-depth exploration into the earliest reported life of the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. And we're drawing on the deepest available stack of sources we have, the earliest biographical accounts that really form the basis of the entire narrative.
Exactly. We're not just, reciting a timeline. This is a step-by-step tracing of a life that permanently redefined the global landscape.
That's it. We're tracking how prophecy, profound personal character, and some really intense geopolitical maneuvering all intertwined to give birth to a new world faith.
And for you, the listener, the immediate takeaway here is context. Specifically, political and spiritual context. We're going to reveal the profound religious expectations that were already swirling in 7th century Arabia.
Expectations held by Jews and Christians alike, right?
Yes, of a coming prophet. And we'll see the dramatic sort of structural tensions within Meccan society, the very tensions that actually set the stage for Muhammad's mission to succeed despite just overwhelming opposition.
Okay, let's unpack this history right from the very beginning. We need to start far, far back, not with Muhammad himself, but with the ancient roots of the holy place he was born into, Mecca.
And the Abrahamic lineage. That's where the city's entire spiritual authority was built.
Let's do it.
Indeed. So the sources begin, of course, with the story of Abraham and the divine promise of great progeny. At the time of this promise, Abraham was, I think, 85, and his wife Sarah was 76.
And they were childless.
Childless. So due to this, Sarah gave Abraham her Egyptian handmaid, Hagar, as a second wife.
And this act, which seems kind of pragmatic at the time, is really where the spiritual separation occurs. It creates these two streams that we need to trace throughout history.
It's the critical juncture. Hagar, fleeing from Sarah's bitterness after she conceived, was promised by an angel that her own progeny would multiply exceedingly. Her son was named Ishmael.
Which means God shall hear.
God shall hear, exactly. And the subsequent birth of Isaac to Sarah marked the inevitable split. Abraham, following divine instruction, he entrusts Hagar and Ishmael to God's angels and sends them away. He recognized he was the patriarch of two great nations, one through Isaac, one through Ishmael.
So where were Hagar and Ishmael guided? I mean, it wasn't to some flourishing land, was it?
No, not at all. It was to a barren, desolate valley named Becca, which would later become Mecca.
But that location, as desolate as it was incredibly crucial.
Oh, absolutely. It was positioned strategically on the major incense route, about 40 camel days south of Canaan, so it was perfectly placed for future trade and influence.
But in the beginning, it was just pure wilderness, which leads to this crisis, this test of faith.
It was a profound test. Hagar and Ishmael suffered terribly from thirst in the sun-baked valley. And the tradition, it vividly describes Hagar running frantically 7 times between 2 points of vantage.
Later named Safa and Marwa.
Right. She was just desperate to sight help or water. At the end of her 7th course, the angel of God finally spoke to her.
And that desperation, that search for a life-giving source, it was rewarded.
Absolutely. The angel revealed the sacred well of Zamzam, which immediately sprung forth, and the presence of this inexhaustible water source was the magnetic center of destiny for that valley. It's the reason the nomadic Jurhum tribe eventually settled there.
So Zamzam provided the lifeblood, but the Kaaba that provided the spiritual anchor. How do the sources describe its establishment?
Well, when Abraham later visited his son Ishmael, God showed him the exact site near the well where they had to build a sanctuary. So they constructed the Kaaba, the cube, roughly square, oriented toward the cardinal directions, and it was built upon the ruins of the original sanctuary established by Adam.
And central to this whole structure is the tradition of the black stone. What are the specific details about its origin in these early accounts?
The sources describe it as a celestial stone, brought by an angel from the nearby hill of Abu Qubays. The tradition says it descended from paradise and that it was originally whiter than milk.
Whiter than milk. Wow.
But it turned black, they say, due to the accumulated sins of Adam's sons. Abraham built this sacred stone into the eastern corner of the Kaaba, where it remains a central object of reverence.
So once the physical structure was complete, Abraham then institutes the key ritual that would define Mecca for millennia, the pilgrimage, the Hajj.
Precisely. God commanded him to purify the house and proclaim the pilgrimage so that men would come on foot and on every lean camel out of every deep ravine.
So this rite of cleansing the house, making the circuit, all the vows and sacrifices that established Mecca as this foundational spiritual center within the Abrahamic world.
A second center, yes, within the orbit of Abrahamic monotheism.
Okay, so we have the spiritual foundation laid by Abraham and Ishmael. Now, let's fast forward many generations. The custodianship of this holy site eventually falls to the powerful tribe of Quraysh. And their political structure, built by a man named Qasay, was highly complex. I mean, it can be really confusing for someone new to this.
It is dense, but it's crucial to understand. Qasay was the figure who consolidated all the various Meccan factions. He established the foundational structure of the Meccan city-state, and before his death, he divided up all the key rights and authority.
And here's where the drama really kicks in. He didn't choose his most capable son, did he?
No, he did not. And this is critical. He favored his eldest son, Abd ad-Dar, who the sources explicitly say was the least capable of all. He vested him with the keys to the Kaaba, the right to knot the ensign of war, ownership of the House of Assembly, and importantly, the authority to provide food and drink to the pilgrims.
That seems like a massive concentration of power, but he handed it to the least capable member. I mean, why would he do that?
The sources suggest Qasay might have done this to prop up his less capable son, to ensure his survival. The hope is that the prestige of the offices would compensate for his lack of, leadership skills.
But that choice, it just immediately set the stage for intense factionalism in the next generation.
It guaranteed it. It ensured that the Meccan state was deliberately designed with built-in instability.
That's a key insight right there. The Meccan political system was designed to be fundamentally unstable, which forced constant negotiation.
Exactly. Because Qasay's preeminent son was Abdu Manaf, who was clearly the better leader. So the next generation, under Abdu Manaf's son Hashim, who was the foremost man of his day, demanded that the most lucrative rights be transferred away from the clan of Abd ad-Dar.
Which sounds like it led to a dramatic, high-stakes political split, almost a civil war.
It did. The two sides prepared for a battle to the death. The key factions were led by the clan of Hashim on one side and the allies of Abd ad-Dar on the other.
And this is where we get that name, the Scented Ones. That's such a powerful image.
It is. It's the political ritual defining the crisis. Hashim's allies brought a bowl of rich perfume, they dipped their hands in it, swore a solemn oath never to abandon one another, and then rubbed their scented hands over the stones of the Kaaba to confirm the pact.
Wow. Bound by the sanctity of the Holy House itself.
The opposing faction then became known as the Confederates.
So how was a civil war averted?
A compromise was finally reached just before the violence began. They split the rights functionally. Hashim's clan received the rights of levying tax and providing food and drink for the pilgrims.
So the economic and provisioning rights.
Right. And in contrast, Abd-Dar's clan retained the spiritual and ceremonial rights, the keys to the Kaaba, and control over the House of Assembly.
Okay, let me just recap that because it's so vital for understanding what comes next.
Yep.
Hashim's line, which is Muhammad's line, held the money and the food, the economic power. The Abd-Dar line held the keys and the ritual authority. This separation of powers, this inherited flaw, is what allowed the early Muslim community to survive, isn't it?
Precisely. This fragile peace established the power split that persisted right into the Prophet's lifetime. Because no single clan held absolute political and religious dominance, they couldn't immediately unite against the threat of Islam without dissolving their entire system. The Quraysh were internally fissured from the very start.
So let's move now to the Prophet's grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib. He was Hashim's son and clearly the leading man of Mecca in his time. And he's responsible for bringing back a key piece of that ancient Abrahamic legacy.
His legacy is founded on the recovery of the ancient well of Zamzam, which had been lost, just forgotten for generations. Abd al-Muttalib was spiritually guided while he was sleeping in the Hijr, that semicircular wall near the Kaaba.
He was told to look for specific, almost mystical signs, right?
Yes. The speaker in his dream instructed him to look for a place marked by highly specific things. The confluence of blood and dung from sacrifices, the location of an ant's nest, and the area where ravens would be pecking.
So strange.
He was told he would find his inheritance there, water that would never fail to water all the pilgrim throng. And he eventually found the site, and the well's recovery just cemented his authority forever.
And his authority was cemented even further during the most famous event of that era, the Year of the Elephant. This whole incident sets the scene for Muhammad's birth.
This happened in the year 570 CE, the very year Muhammad was born. Abraha, the Christian Abyssinian general, marched his massive army, including war elephants, to destroy the Kaaba. He wanted to replace Mecca as the religious center of Arabia.
Before the attack, Abraha seized Abd al-Muttalib's camels. And when Abd al-Muttalib came to ask for them back, Abraha was just completely surprised that the leader of Mecca was focused on livestock instead of the threatened holy site.
And this is the profound moment of confidence. Abd al-Muttalib famously told Abraha, "I am the lord of the camels, and the temple likewise hath the Lord who will defend it."
Amazing.
He then advised the Quraysh to withdraw to the hills. He himself went to the Kaaba and prayed, "O God, thy slave protecteth his house. Protect thou thy house."
So according to the sources, the defense was miraculous. It wasn't military.
Indeed. The tradition states that Abraha's elephant, Mahmud, refused to move toward the Kaaba. And then the army was destroyed by a massive flock of birds, pelting them with stones, cementing the sacred, divinely protected status of Mecca. The event was so famous it gave the year its name.
Now, despite Abd al-Muttalib's apparent piety and his confidence in Allah, the society he lived in was steeped in religious chaos. I mean, he was clearly an outlier.
Absolutely. The tension was immense. While Abd al-Muttalib only prayed to Allah, the supreme god, the Kaaba itself contained the idol Hubal, which had become the central symbol of barakah or blessing for the Quraysh.
Idolatry was rampant.
Completely. The sources state there were 360 idols surrounding the Kaaba, one for every day of the year. And nearly every Meccan house had its own household idol that men would stroke for blessings before leaving.
And we also need to note the major secondary shrines and goddesses, the daughters of God.
Yes, Alat in Taif, Al-Uzza near Mecca, and Amanat on the Red Sea coast. Quraysh considered themselves the tolerant guardians of the world's spiritual center. But this tolerance, which even allowed a Christian icon of the Virgin Mary and Child Christ to be painted inside the Kaaba, it just meant they were religiously fragmented.
But within this chaos, there were these powerful undercurrents of monotheism and, critically, of prophecy.
There was a small, respected group known as the Hunafa. They upheld the original pure religion of Abraham, rejecting idolatry. Zayd ibn Amr and Waraka ibn Nawfal are key examples of this. But more importantly, the expectation of a coming prophet was pervasive.
Especially among the Jewish communities, right?
The Jewish communities in the region were almost unanimous in their expectancy. They were certain that many predicted signs had been fulfilled. Their tradition led them to assume the prophet would, of course, be a Jew.
But not everyone agreed.
No. Waraka, who had converted to Christianity, and other knowledgeable Christians, they questioned this assumption. They saw no reason why the prophet should not be an Arab, given the Arabs' deep need to be rid of false gods and restore the purity of the Kaaba.
This is where it gets so interesting. The stage is set with this deep, ancient Abrahamic tradition, unstable high-stakes politics, pagan chaos, and this widespread cross-faith expectation of a coming figure.
Which brings us right to the birth of the individual who would fulfill those prophecies. Muhammad, born in the year of the elephant. His father, Abdullah, died before his birth. His mother, Amina, felt a profound internal presence, a light within her during her pregnancy.
And the sources detail this extraordinary vision surrounding his birth.
Yes. When he was born, she saw a light shine forth from her so intensely that it illuminated the castles of Bostra in Syria.
A sign pointing toward the northern civilized world.
Exactly. A voice instructed her to name him Muhammad the Praised One and place him beneath the protection of the one God.
Now, the tradition of sending high-born Quraysh children to the desert, to a modern ear that seems kind of counterintuitive. Why leave the center of power?
It was seen as absolutely vital for physical and cultural resilience. It was about inoculating the next generation against the decadence of city life. It was about providing three essential things: fresh air for the breast, pure Arabic for the tongue, and freedom for the soul.
And he was entrusted to the Bani Sa'd ibn Bakr. His foster mother, Halima, immediately saw a profound, undeniable change in her family's fortunes.
Halima's account is one of the most important proofs of his blessing. It was a year of terrible drought. Her she-ass was so weak she lagged behind the entire troop. Their old she-camel yielded no milk. As soon as she took the orphan boy into her care, she describes her breasts instantly overflowing with milk, the camel's udders filled, and the feeble ass outstripped the whole troop on the return journey.
Incredible.
Their flocks just flourished in this barren land for 2 years.
The family enjoyed that prosperity until they returned him, but they were so insistent on keeping him that Amina eventually allowed it again, fearing the plague of Mecca. It was during this extended stay that the purification incident happened, the chest incident.
Yes. The boy Muhammad was playing with his foster brother when two men in white, carrying a golden basin of snow, came to him. The tradition describes them laying hold of him, splitting open his breast, bringing forth his heart.
And taking from it a black clot which they cast away.
Right. Then they washed his heart with the snow.
So for a modern listener, what's the ultimate symbolic weight of this? Is it about purifying him from a moral failing? Or is it preparing him for a unique spiritual destiny?
It is entirely the latter. It's preparation for a destiny unique among mankind. The purification is symbolic of the removal of the original innate inclination toward evil. The prophet later explained this by saying that Satan toucheth every son of Adam the day his mother beareth him, save only Mary and her son.
So this event, happening out in the desert, solidified his divine distinction.
And his spiritual capacity, yes. But despite this extraordinary beginning, his early life was marked by just deep personal sorrow and loss.
He was a twice-bereaved orphan.
His mother, Amina, died when he was only 6. 2 years later, his powerful grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, died when Muhammad was 8. The grandfather, recognizing the boy's destiny, entrusted him to his own son, Abu Talib, who became his uncle and protector.
And the immense love and support from Abu Talib's wife, Fatima, you really can't overstate that.
She effectively replaced his mother. Muhammad recalled her intense kindness, noting she would prioritize him even over her own children's needs. This profound familial love became the literal shield he would rely on years later when his mission began.
And that need for protection was foreshadowed very early on. His destiny was already being recognized by people outside the Meccan sphere.
Yes, on his first major caravan journey to Syria at the age of 12.
With Abu Talib.
Under the protection of Abu Talib, yes. They halted near Bostra, close to the cell of a Christian monk named Bahira. And Bahira was astute. He noticed a small, low-hanging cloud moving slowly, constantly shading only one or two of the travelers.
And when they stopped?
The cloud stopped, and the tree branches lowered over them, providing this double layer of shade. Bahira knew this was an unusual, high-significance event.
And he identified the boy immediately, based on scriptural signs.
After observing Muhammad and talking to him, Bahira asked to see his back. He immediately identified the seal of prophethood between his shoulders, exactly as it was described in his sacred text.
So he turned to Abu Talib and gave him a grave warning.
A very grave warning. He said, "Take thy brother's son back to his country and guard him against the Jews. For by God, if they see him and know of him that which I know, they will contrive evil against him." He recognized that great things are in store for this brother's son of thine.
That warning really sets the stage for the rest of his life. He then grows into this ultimate reputation in Mecca, a society obsessed with honor and trustworthiness.
By the age of 25, he was universally recognized throughout Mecca as Al-Amin.
The reliable, the trustworthy, the honest.
A title earned through years of scrupulous dealing, especially with merchants who entrusted him with their goods.
And this reputation brought him into the employment of Khadija, a wealthy merchant woman and a distant cousin.
Khadija hired him to take her merchandise on a crucial, profitable trade journey to Syria. She offered him double the highest fee she had ever paid, and he was accompanied by her slave, Maysara.
And on this second journey, the prophecy was confirmed again by another monk in Bostra.
Yes. They took shelter beneath a tree, maybe the very same tree as 15 years earlier. A monk named Nestor came out and asked Maysara who the man was sitting beneath the tree. Maysara explained he was a man of Quraysh, of the people who guard the sanctuary.
And Nestor's reply was categorical.
None other than a prophet is sitting beneath that tree.
Maysara reported all of this back to Khadija, along with descriptions of seeing 2 angels shading the prophet during the journey. But it was her Christian cousin, Waraka, the respected Hanif, who provided the ultimate spiritual confirmation.
Khadija related all the accounts to Waraka, who responded, "If this be true, Khadija, then is Muhammad the prophet of our people. Long have I known that a prophet is to be expected, and his time hath now come."
So Khadija then makes the bold move of proposing marriage herself.
Citing his kinship, his trustworthiness, beautiful character, and truthfulness, they married when he was 25, marking the start of a family core that would endure the greatest trials.
And Khadija was more than just a partner.
Oh, she was the first to share his ideals. She provided him with the necessary domestic stability for the next 15 years leading up to his mission.
They had 6 children together, though 2 were lost early.
Yes. 2 sons, Qasim and Abdullah, both of whom died shortly after birth, immense private grief, and 4 daughters, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima.
And the household soon expanded beyond their biological children, forming this core group of future leaders. Key among them was Zayd.
Zayd was a highborn boy from a northern tribe who had been captured and sold into slavery. When Zayd saw members of his own tribe in Mecca, he managed to send them a poem hinting at his location. His father and uncle came to Mecca specifically to ransom him at any price.
And Muhammad gave Zayd a choice, which became this defining moment of loyalty.
He did. Muhammad offered Zayd his freedom to choose, with or without ransom, and Zayd's immediate choice was decisive and deeply moving. He said, "I would not choose any man in preference to thee. Thou art unto me as my father and my mother."
Wow. How did Muhammad respond to that extraordinary declaration?
He immediately took Zayd to the Kaaba and publicly proclaimed, "All ye who are present, bear witness that Zayd is my son. I am his heir and he is mine." From that day, he was known as Zayd ibn Muhammad.
It established this profound, legally recognized bond that just defied the norms of slavery.
And a few years later, another significant addition occurred: his cousin Ali.
Right, due to a severe famine.
Yes, Abu Talib was struggling to support his large family. So Muhammad and his uncle, Abbas, agreed that each would take custody of one of Abu Talib's sons. Abbas took Zafar, and Muhammad took the youngest, Ali, who was only about 10 years old.
So Ali was raised alongside Zayd and Muhammad's 4 daughters, forming this immediate and intensely loyal family core, the perfect nucleus for the monumental mission that was about to begin.
Muhammad, even before the revelation, was known to seek spiritual retreat. He would often withdraw to a cave on Mount Hira just to escape the chaos of Meccan society.
It was there, around the age of 40, during one of these retreats, that the first seismic event occurred, the encounter with Gabriel.
He was asleep when Gabriel came and commanded him, "Recite." And Muhammad, terrified, replied, "I cannot recite." The angel then embraced him tightly, released him, and commanded the words again. After the third command and embrace, the words came.
And the content of that first revelation?
The first 5 lines of the Quran, Surah Iqra. It means recite. The words establish the relationship between creation and knowledge. Recite in the name of thy Lord who created. He createth man from a clot of blood. Recite, and thy Lord is the most bountiful. He who hath taught by the pen, taught man what he knew not.
He later said, "It was as though the words were written on my heart."
He returned home trembling, seeking comfort from his wife. And Khadijah's immediate action was crucial.
She covered him with a cloak and then immediately took him to her blind, elderly Christian cousin, Waraka.
Waraka, having recognized Muhammad's future role years earlier, now provided the final, immediate confirmation of his mission. He identified the messenger as the Namus.
Wait, what exactly is the significance of that term, Namus, in this context?
That's critical. Namus is an archaic term. It often means the angel of revelation or sometimes the law itself. In this context, it explicitly meant the bringer of the divine law, the one who came to Moses.
I see.
Waraka exclaimed, "Holy, holy, there hath come unto Muhammad the greatest Namus, even he that would come unto Moses. Verily, Muhammad is the prophet of this people. Bid him rest assured."
So Waraka confirmed that Muhammad was receiving the same divine law as the prophets of old, and with that confirmation, the first foundations of Islam were laid, starting with the immediate household.
The first 4 were Khadijah, Zayd, Ali, and Abu Bakr, the prophet's closest, most trusted friend, who immediately accepted the message without reservation. They were soon joined by others like Uthman and Talha, who had both heard prophecies about a coming prophet from traveling monks.
Initially, the faith was practiced in secret, but a divine command soon forced the prophet to take his message public, starting with his own immediate kin.
That's right. When the verse, "Warn thy family who are thy nearest of kin," was revealed, the prophet commanded Ali to prepare a feast for the clan of Hashim, about 40 men. He then stood to call them to God, but Abu Lahab, his hostile uncle, interrupted him.
And after the second attempt to speak, Ali, the youngest one there, stood up.
Ali, who was only 13, stood up and declared, "O prophet of God, I will be thy helper in this." The prophet laid his hand on Ali's neck and made this extraordinary declaration. "This is my brother, mine executor, and my successor amongst you. Hearken unto him and obey him."
That statement is just seismic in historical terms. What was the immediate fallout among the Hashemites?
The elders of the clan, the very men Muhammad was trying to warn, they rose to their feet laughing, mocking Abu Talib, saying he had been ordered to obey his own son.
So it was initially ignored or ridiculed.
But this public statement of spiritual and temporal precedence for Ali was noted by the sources and became a major foundational point for later political and sectarian division.
Right. The family meeting may have been mocked, but opposition really solidified when the message was directed against the Meccan gods and their economic power structure.
Quraysh leaders went directly to Abu Talib to demand he restrain his nephew. Abu Talib was caught in an agonizing position, feeling the burden of protecting his clan's honor against the entire city. He told his nephew, "O son of my brother, spare me and spare thyself."
And the prophet's response, the great oath of refusal, it cemented his position.
It was a powerful oath of tenacity. "I swear by God, if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, on condition that I abandon this course, I would not abandon it."
Wow.
Moved to tears, Abu Talib reaffirmed his unwavering protection. "Go thou and say what thou wilt, for by God I will never forsake thee on any account."
And since they couldn't touch the prophet due to Abu Talib's protection, a matter of clan honor, Quraysh turned their persecution on the weakest adherents.
The poor, the foreign, and the slaves. But soon, the tide began to turn with the conversion of two giants.
The first was Hamza, the prophet's uncle, known for his strength and pride.
Yes, after Abu Jahl publicly abused the prophet at the Safa gate, Hamza, upon hearing the news, rushed to Abu Jahl, struck him violently with his bow, and publicly declared his allegiance to Islam. That provided immediate and significant physical protection to the small community.
The second was Umar ibn al-Khattab, the fiercest opponent, who initially set out to commit murder.
Umar, enraged by the growing movement, resolved to kill the prophet. He was on his way when he learned his own sister, Fatima, and her husband had converted. He burst into their house, striking his sister until she bled.
Seeing her blood, he immediately regretted his violence.
And asked to read the text they had been reciting. It was the opening of Surah Taha. After reading it, Umar was overwhelmed by the beauty and nobility of the words.
And someone who was hiding inside told him about the prophet's prayer.
Kebab, yes. He emerged and told Umar that the prophet had recently prayed specifically for God to strengthen Islam through either Abu Jahl or Umar.
Umar immediately went to the house of Arqam, where the Muslims were meeting secretly. His arrival must have caused pandemonium.
The Muslims inside feared him greatly. They barricaded the door, but Hamza declared, "Let him come in. If his intent be evil, we will slay him with his own sword."
And when Umar entered and declared his faith,
the prophet seized him by the belt and pulled him into the room, saying, "Allahu Akbar." Umar's conversion was so powerful that Muslims were able to begin worshipping publicly at the Kaaba for the first time.
Meanwhile, persecution led to diplomacy and the first flight of refugees, seeking safety across the sea in Abyssinia.
A group of Muslims fled to Abyssinia, which is modern Ethiopia, ruled by the Christian king Nagus. Quraysh sent two shrewd envoys with gifts to demand their return, arguing the Muslims had invented some new religion that wasn't Christian or pagan.
But the Negus was highly intelligent
and insisted on hearing from the refugees themselves. Jafar, the prophet's cousin, became the spokesman.
and his theological definition of Jesus was the key to their protection.
It was. Jafar offered a clear, powerful theological statement defining Jesus as the slave of God and his messenger and his spirit and his word, which he gave to Mary, the Blessed Virgin. The Negus, impressed by how that agreed with his own scripture, stated that Jesus exceedeth not what thou hast said, and he refused to return the refugees. This was a critical early demonstration of Christian acceptance and protection for the new Muslim community.
After the conversions of the giants, Quraysh made one final, brutal attempt to crush the community, the formal boycott.
Yes, driven by the increasingly desperate Abu Jahl, they placed an interdiction on the entire clan of Hashim because they continued to protect the prophet. The document stipulated total social and economic isolation. No marrying, no buying, no selling.
And the clans were forced to retreat into the ravine of Abu Talib, enduring nearly 3 years of starvation.
The document formalizing this brutal ban was placed inside the Kaaba itself, giving it sacred authority. But after years of suffering, 5 prominent men decided it was intolerable and swore to annul the ban.
And when they went to get the document,
According to the sources, they found that worms had eaten the entire contract, everything except for the opening words, "In thy name, O God." The ban was immediately annulled.
a spiritual defense. But soon after, the prophet lost his 2 greatest protectors in quick succession: Khadijah, his anchor, and Abu Talib, his shield. This left him fully exposed.
And with Abu Talib gone, Quraysh moved swiftly from persecution to assassination. They knew a simple execution would trigger a blood feud.
So they devised a plan to dilute the vengeance.
Their ultimate decision was to send one man from every clan to kill Muhammad simultaneously. That way, blood money would be owed by all clans, making revenge impossible for the small Hashemite clan to pursue.
But the prophet learned of the plot and immediately made his escape plan, relying on Ali for a dangerous decoy.
He asked Ali to sleep in his bed, wrapped in his own distinctive green Hadrami cloak. This ensured that the conspirators watching the house would assume the target was still inside. The prophet left while they watched, reciting the beginning of Surah Yasin, including the words, "And we have enshrouded them, so that they see not."
The sources claim that God took away their sight and he passed through their midst unseen.
It's an incredible tactical decision, but also a moment of immense faith and trust in Ali, who risked death as a substitute. Ali stayed in the bed until dawn. The conspirators, realizing they had been utterly outwitted, were furious and set off in immediate pursuit.
The prophet and Abu Bakr, his sole companion, initially traveled south, away from their destination, Yathrib. Wait, why hide south? Isn't that backtracking?
It was a brilliant tactical retreat. All the search parties would naturally expect them to head north towards Yathrib. By traveling south, they threw the immediate pursuit off track and created the distance they needed to hide.
They hid in a cave while trackers were sent out, with a massive reward offered.
They hid in the cave of Har, and they were tracked right to the entrance. The sources emphasized the miraculous protection they received. The web spun across the entrance, the nesting pigeons evading capture. This confirmed the spiritual significance of Abu Bakr being the second of two when they were both in the caves.
After days of hiding, they continued north to Yathrib, the oasis city that was already expecting him due to those widespread prophecies.
The people of Quba, the nearest settlement, had been going out daily to look for them. That morning, they had returned home defeated by the heat. But a Jew, standing on the roof of his house, caught sight of the travelers in new white garments.
And the Jew, having been told why his neighbors were searching, recognized them immediately.
He shouted at the top of his voice, "Sons of Koila, he has come, he has come!" The entire community streamed out in a noon of great joy, greeting them with songs of praise.
The prophet's first message to them in Quba was foundational.
"O people, give unto one another greetings of peace. Feed food unto the hungry, honor the ties of kinship. Pray in the hours when men sleep. Even so shall ye enter paradise in peace."
He then pressed on towards the city center, riding his camel, Qaswa.
Every prominent family in Yathrib entreated him to stay with them, competing for the honor. But the prophet kept replying that his camel was under instruction from God. Qaswa eventually turned into a large walled courtyard.
That location, chosen by the camel, became the site of the first mosque.
It was. The city, Yathrib, soon acquired a new, permanent name, Al-Madinah, the city of the prophet. He immediately gave orders for the courtyard to be made into a mosque, working alongside the Muhajira, the emigrants, and the Ansar, the helpers.
Before long, they needed a universal way to call the faithful to prayer, uniting a community with diverse histories.
There was a genuine debate. Should they use a Jewish horn or a Christian wooden clapper? They chose the latter, but the clapper was never used because Abdullah ibn Zayd, one of the helpers, had a profound dream.
The dream that established the Adhan, the call to prayer.
He dreamt of a man in green garments who taught him a better, purely spiritual way, to use the words themselves. The man repeated the magnification Allahu Akbar 4 times, followed by the core testimonies. "I testify that there is no God but God. I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God," and the calls to prayer and salvation. This dream established the Adhan exactly as it is used today, a unique, audible marker for the new faith.
The move to Medina didn't bring peace, though. Quraysh was determined to crush the community, which led to the 3 great battles that defined the early years of the Islamic State.
The first, Badr, in 2 AH, was the decision point. The Muslims initially set out for a wealthy caravan led by Abu Sufyan, but they learned that a heavily armed army of Quraysh, nearly 1,000 strong, was also approaching.
They had to choose between wealth and war.
And the prophet was decisive. He told his men, "God the All-Highest hath promised me one of the 2 parties, the caravan or the army." And he knew they would face the army. The Muslims were severely outnumbered, more than 3 to 1.
The battle started with the traditional opening duel, which immediately placed the prophet's own kin at the center of the conflict.
Yes, Quraysh demanded to fight their peers. The prophet called forth Ubaidah, Hamza, and Ali. Hamza and Ali were successful immediately. The involvement of Muhammad's closest family in the first blows immediately raised the stakes.
And the sources report this battle was won not just by arms, but by the belief that God assisted them with his spiritual presence.
The prophet had exhorted his men, promising paradise to any man slain fighting steadfastly. And the tradition records that God promised, "I will help you with 1,000 of the angels, troop on troop." The sources report the presence of angels was felt as a strength by the faithful and as a terror by the infidels.
This belief in spiritual assistance turned the tide, leading to an overwhelming victory.
And the loss of Mecca's most eminent leaders, including Abu Jahl. But Badr was a miracle. Uhud, a year later, was a painful lesson, triggered by Quraysh's pursuit of revenge.
Quraysh returned with a formidable army of 3,000 men, led by Abu Sufyan. This time, vengeance was deeply personal.
Hind, who had lost her father and brother at Badr, played a central role, mutilating the dead and rallying the troops, specifically seeking the liver of Hamza.
The Muslims were initially winning, but the defeat that followed was entirely self-inflicted, a failure of discipline.
The Prophet had placed 50 archers on a crucial hill to guard the rear flank. When the Meccan lines broke, the archers, seeing their companions surge forward for spoils, assumed the battle was won.
Despite their commander's warning,
Who reminded them, "The messenger of God commanded you to stay here whether we win or lose." But about 40 of them abandoned their post.
which created the fatal opening that Khalid ibn Walid exploited.
Khalid, who was still an enemy commander at that time, saw the undefended flank and immediately executed a devastating attack from the rear. The Muslim army dissolved into chaos, with rumors spreading that the Prophet himself was killed.
And the Prophet himself was targeted and severely injured.
He was struck by a sharp stone, breaking a tooth, gashing his lip, embedding 2 rings from his helmet into his cheek. It was a profound personal crisis. And this is the moment Talha performed his heroic defense. He threw himself in front of the Prophet to deflect a sword blow aimed at his head, sacrificing the use of the fingers of one of his hands for the rest of his life.
The lesson here is clear. Despite divine favor, strategy and strict discipline are essential for success.
Precisely. This battle, despite the tragedy, was a stark lesson in the need for total obedience, even when victory seems assured.
So the third great conflict, the Battle of the Trench in 5 AH, was less about open combat and more about a strategic, psychological siege.
It was an existential threat. A vast confederacy of 10,000 men, Quraysh, Ghatafan, and other tribes, marched on Medina. The sheer scale meant Medina could not fight conventionally.
And the successful defensive strategy that saved them came from Salman the Persian, a relatively new convert.
Salman, having experience with Persian defensive strategies, suggested digging a wide, deep trench, something completely unknown in Arabian warfare, to protect the city's vulnerable north side. The Prophet, demonstrating practical leadership, worked alongside everyone, digging for 6 days straight.
But the situation became critical when they faced betrayal from within the city walls.
The Jewish tribe of Bani Qurayza, who had a crucial pact with the Muslims, renounced their treaty. This meant the Muslims were now threatened from within as well as from the massive external army. They faced both psychological terror and physical starvation.
So how was the siege ultimately broken?
After nearly a month, the enemy's provisions were running low. The siege was broken by a severe, divinely sent storm. A terrifying wind that overturned their cooking pots, extinguished their fires, and blew away their tents. Abu Sufyan, terrified, ordered an immediate retreat.
And after the siege was broken, immediate attention turned to the betrayers, the Bani Qurayza.
The Prophet besieged their fortresses. The Jews appealed for their former allies, the Aws, to intercede. The Prophet agreed to let Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, a respected, gravely wounded chief of the Aws, adjudicate the tribe's fate according to their own law.
And what was Sa'd's judgment?
Sa'd, dying from a wound he'd sustained, ruled that the men should be executed and the women and children taken captive. The source material is explicit that this judgment coincided exactly with the laws of warfare against besieged cities found in the Torah itself. The tribe was wiped out, securing Medina from any further internal treachery.
With those existential military threats overcome, the focus shifted towards diplomacy, starting with the deeply controversial Treaty of Hudaybiyah.
In 6 AH, the Muslims set out for Mecca to perform the Lesser Pilgrimage, a clear signal of peaceful intent. But Quraysh blocked them.
And the subsequent treaty was, well, it seemed disastrous.
The terms demanded a 10-year truce, and, most bitterly, required the return of any Meccan who converted to Islam and fled to Medina. The Muslims viewed this as humiliating.
This perceived weakness deeply frustrated the faithful. Umar questioned the Prophet furiously.
He confronted him asking, "Are we not Muslims and are they not infidels? Why should we humiliate our religion?" Even when commanded to sacrifice their animals outside the sacred territory, the companions hesitated. They were bewildered, ready to mutiny over what looked like a total surrender.
How did the Prophet resolve this critical moment of lost morale?
He acted. He went forth and, without a word, sacrificed his own camel and began shaving his head. At the sight of their prophet's quiet, immediate obedience, the men leaped up, realizing the command was not about logic, but submission to divine timing.
But the controversial return clause was immediately tested. How did the Prophet use this seemingly disastrous clause to his advantage?
An escaped Muslim captive, Abu Jandal, arrived and had to be returned. However, another convert, Abu Basir, was also sent back, but he managed to kill his escort and escape. The Prophet was technically obligated to return him, but when the Meccan envoy refused to take him back, the Prophet simply told Abu Basir, "Go whither thou wilt."
That created the loophole.
Exactly. Abu Basir and other converts who escaped Mecca formed a raiding camp on the Meccan caravan route to Syria. They became the terror of the trade routes, crippling Quraysh's economy. Having suffered immense losses, Quraysh themselves were forced to send a letter to the Prophet begging him to take the converts back.
It demonstrates that the weak treaty terms were actually economically unsustainable for Mecca.
Precisely. Then, in 7 AH, after Hudaybiyah, the Muslims launched the successful conquest of Khaybar, the Jewish fortresses to the north. Khaybar was strategically vital. The fortresses were captured one by one, aided by engines of war. Muhammad gave the standard to Ali, reinforcing Ali's critical military role.
And despite the conquest, the Prophet demonstrated immediate clemency, even in the face of poison.
After the conquest, a woman, whose family had been slain, attempted to poison the Prophet through a lamb's shoulder. A companion, Bishr, died immediately. The Prophet, upon spitting out the mite, asked the woman why she did it. She replied that she thought, "If he be a king, I shall be well quit of him, and if he be a prophet, he will be informed of the poison."
And he pardoned her.
He pardoned her, refusing to stoop to vengeance. Meanwhile, the community faced immense domestic turmoil surrounding the traumatic slander of Aisha.
This was a devastating month-long crisis. Hypocrites in Medina spread a calumny accusing Aisha of adultery.
The emotional strain fractured the community. The Prophet was tormented. The situation became so tense that the two main Medinan tribes, the Aus and Khazraj, nearly came to blows in the mosque over who should punish the slanderers.
The crisis was ultimately resolved by a revelation that confirmed her innocence and established a severe legal penalty for slander.
The revelation confirmed Aisha's innocence, clearing her name, and prescribed 80 lashes for slanderers who failed to produce 4 witnesses. Critically, the Prophet chose not to pursue the more insidious hypocrites with execution, preferring to leave them to God, prioritizing communal harmony.
Which brings us to the zenith of his career, the victory of Mecca in 8 AH. Quraysh broke the truce of Hudaybiyah, giving the Muslims the pretext to march.
The Muslim army was massive, 10,000 men. The Prophet advanced stealthily and ordered his men to light 10,000 campfires on the outskirts of the city, completely overwhelming Quraysh with the sight of his power.
And Abu Sufyan, the lifelong enemy, was captured and brought before the Prophet.
Abbas brought him in. Abu Sufyan, seeing the immense military display, finally accepted Islam. The Prophet then showed immense clemency, making Abu Sufyan's house a place of refuge, a masterstroke of reconciliation that minimized resistance.
The entry into Mecca was a test of his character vengeance or reconciliation.
Sa'd ibn Ubadah, leading the vanguard, chanted a war cry that promised total slaughter. When Abu Sufyan reported this, the Prophet immediately overruled it, declaring, "This is the day of mercy, the day on which God hath exalted Quraysh." He issued a general amnesty.
A policy focused entirely on long-term stability.
His first act upon entry was the cleansing of the Kaaba. He rode around it, pointing his staff at the 360 idols, reciting the revelation. "The truth hath come, and the false hath vanished." As he pointed, the idols fell forward on their faces.
And this act was immediately followed by profound reconciliation, extending even to his most bitter enemies.
He received the homage of hundreds of former enemies, including Hind and Ikrimah, the son of Abu Jahl. He pardoned even the fiercest opponents, focusing on winning hearts rather than exacting blood.
And this leads to his strategic policy of reconciling influential figures, even if it caused confusion among his most devout followers.
The reconciliation policy was formalized by giving large gifts to figures whose hearts are to be reconciled. Abu Sufyan, for example, received 300 camels. The Prophet later explained that while a devout but poor man was worth more than a worldful of the wealthy recipients, he reconciled the wealthy men so that they might better submit unto God.
Pragmatic, strategic mercy.
Exactly. Following the victory of Mecca, the external conflicts largely subsided. The focus of the mission shifted inwards.
To the articulation of the greater holy war.
On return from the campaign to Tabuk, the prophet defined the internal struggle. We have returned from the lesser holy war to the greater holy war. When asked what the greater war was, he answered, the war against the soul.
Emphasizing that the spiritual battle must perpetuate in daily life.
As the mission concluded, we look towards the final days and that poignant moment with his daughter Fatima. He lay much of the time in his final illness with his head on Aisha's lap. When Fatima visited, he whispered 2 secrets to her. First, she began to weep, and then, after the second secret, she smiled through her tears.
What were those secrets?
Fatima later revealed that he first whispered he would die in that illness, which caused her tears. Then he confided that she would be the first of the people of his house to follow him. That knowledge, guaranteeing her swift reunion with him, gave her joy.
The final acts included the critical matter of who would lead the congregation in prayer, an immediate sign of succession.
When the prophet was too weak to lead the prayer himself, he insisted repeatedly that Abu Bakr should take his place, confirming his precedence with the community in a ritual context.
After the prophet's death, the shock of the community was immense. Some companions, like Umar, were initially in denial.
The companions were paralyzed. Abu Bakr went to the mosque, ascended the pulpit, and cited the revelation that confirmed the prophet's mortality. If he die or be slain, will ye then turn upon your heels? This brought immediate clarity, reminding the shocked community that the revelation, not the messenger, was permanent.
The political question of succession, however, immediately erupted.
While Ali and others were at the prophet's house, most of the helpers gathered in a hall, intending to pledge allegiance to their chief, Sa'd ibn Ubaidah. They argued they were the helpers of God and the ruler should be one of them.
Abu Bakr and Umar rushed to the hall to intervene. Umar's intervention became the deciding factor.
Abu Bakr tactfully praised the helpers, but firmly stated that the Arabs would only accept the authority of a man of Quraysh. The argument became heated until Umar intervened, demanding silence and asking the critical question. O helpers, know ye not that the messenger of God ordered Abu Bakr to lead the prayer?
That simple question, referencing the prophet's final, unambiguous choice, resolved the core conflict.
The helpers, having witnessed the prophet's own instruction, replied, God forbid that we should take precedence over him. Umar immediately seized Abu Bakr's hand and pledged allegiance, followed by the others. This appeal to the prophet's final, witness precedence settled the matter.
We must also remember the final guidance he left for those seeking to balance spiritual duty with worldly engagement.
The saying often attributed to Ali summarizing the prophet's guidance is key. Do for this world as if to live forever, and for the next as if to die upon the morrow. This dual emphasis, relentless worldly effort paired with constant spiritual priority was the final guidance.
What's so fascinating here is how the narrative is constantly marked by this intertwining of ancestral promises, from Abraham and the miracles of Zamzam, with the profound vulnerability of human experience. Deep personal loss, betrayal, military setbacks.
Exactly. We have traced a story where character Muhammad, being Al-Amin, the trustworthy one, was the prerequisite for prophecy, and his policy consistently favored reconciliation and long-term stability over immediate vengeance.
Look at the pardoning the poisoner, the clemency after the victory of Mecca, the wisdom in settling the succession by appealing to that highest common denominator, Abu Bakr's precedence in prayer.
That is the ultimate key insight. The foundation of the faith was built on an acceptance of complex human relationships and loyalties, tested repeatedly by fire. The political structure of Mecca itself, designed with instability, ironically enabled the eventual triumph of Islam.
So what does this all mean for the generations of believers who followed? Let's leave you with this final thought for reflection. The prophet declared that his companions are even as the stars, whichsoever of them ye follow, ye shall be rightly guided.
So considering the intense loyalties and political tensions that existed between these key figures, from the final moments between Ali and Abbas debating succession versus Umar championing Abu Bakr and recalling the Prophet's own early declaration of Ali as his successor, what does it mean for a believer to derive guidance from all these stars, acknowledging the complex human and sometimes contentious relationships at the very foundation of the faith? And understanding that guidance emerged not from unanimity, but from intense, often conflicting devotion, something to consider long after this deep dive is complete.